Testing, testing. Testing, testing. And Kelly, you're good to start whenever you're ready.
Gavel, boom, boom. I'd like to call the Marvin Planning Board meeting of December 15th, 2022 to order. We have a quorum who is birthday in a tropical island.
He's in a better place than we are.
He's in a better place. He's not dead. He's in a better place though. All right, so has everyone had a chance to look at the agenda?
Yes.
Could I get a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Do we have anyone for public comment?
You just need to adopt the minutes first.
Oh, shoot, sorry. I was looking at that thing, yeah. And has everyone had a chance to look at the minutes from the previous meeting, the November 15th meeting? Any changes, questions, comments? If there are none, if someone could make a motion to approve?
I move to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Now public comment.
There was nobody signed up.
Yeah, we only have applicants here, so.
Sorry, really fast. Who made that motion? And who seconded? Thank you.
Why can't I see? Oh, there's the agenda. Okay. Post meeting. Sorry.
Next up is public comment, but you don't have any public here. You just have the applicants.
That's what I said. I don't think any of us can hear each other. I think,
Hmm?
I think we're having, folks online might be able to hear us, but we can't hear each other. So that's I guess there's no, these microphones don't necessarily project around the room. Yeah, they only feed into the stream.
Yes, that is correct. But we will have the AV thing completed hopefully early next year, which will also include sound dampening panels, which will help with the acoustics and everything.
Speakers are going in January.
There you go.
Why can't I see the agenda on?
Technical difficulties.
Okay.
I didn't make it full screen. Scroll down.
Okay. I was trying to look at it through. All right. Since there is no public comment and no one signed up for public comment, we're going to start with discussion and recommendation of final plat for minor subdivision application 22-12977, bonds on Bonds Grove Church Road.
Okay, so we have received a final plat or a minor subdivision application. Oh, I just realized that parcel was wrong. That's weird. For the property located at 8311 Bonds Grove Church Road. The property owners, Casey and Stacy Wesnebeck, has submitted this application. It's basically just a simple one lot, taking the parent tract that's 5.15 acres and creating one additional lot that exceeds our minimum lot regulations. Per our ordinance, doesn't matter regardless if it's a major or minor subdivision, all final plats have to go to planning board for recommendation and then council for final consideration. Overall, this is just a simple one lot subdivision, complies with all the regulations. And unless you guys have any questions, I'm not going to really probably get any, I won't go over the specifics, but it does meet all our ordinance criteria. Creating one additional lot and then the existing home will remain on the will remain on the additional 4.10 acres that's left over. I'm pretty sure he's doing this for family anyway.
Does anyone have any questions, comments? Would anyone like to make a motion? And there is a motion suggestion if you are logged into. Okay, then I will.
It's a big one. It's a big motion.
It's a big emotion. Hold on. Yeah, I've got it up somewhere. Hold on. There it is.
Okay. Was that blank for my name?
I,
I blank.
Mickey Mouse.
Richard Holzberg, make the motion to recommend the approval of the final plat for the minor subdivision application 22-12977 to find the proposed minor subdivision complies with the Village of Marvin Code of Ordinances, Village of Marvin 2020 Land Use Plan, other officially adopted village plans, and is reasonable and in the public interest and consistent with surrounding use and zoning. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. I'm just signing my name on you. I'm signing here. All right. Excellent. Moving on. Discussion recommendation of the Estates at Marvin Acres Brantley Farm Property Subdivision Sketch Plan Submittal.
All right, so after, I guess it's our third month now. It's being brought to you guys tonight for basically discussion and consideration for a recommendation to the village council for the sketch plan for the Estates at Marvin Acres. This sketch plan has minorly changed since you guys saw it briefly in at the November meeting. Really, those changes include some recommendations from the PRG board, which was basically kind of making sure the tree mitigation area was identified and ensuring tree preservation throughout the development. Those were made by the applicants, so that the final site plan is in your guys' packets for consideration. I will go over kind of my staff report and then I will turn it over to the applicant for any additional questions, comments. The presentation is in your guys' PowerPoint as well, or in your guys' packets as well. And I'll probably let the applicant kind of go through that, but it's very similar to what you guys saw at the November meeting. That being said, the proposal in front of you guys tonight is for 23 single-family lots on the two tracts of which totals 47 acres. It's yielding basically 0.54 units per acre. One of those lots, I think it was lot 22, has the existing house on there, and that is to remain. So really, you're only having 22 lots for construction being proposed. The applicant has submitted this as a conservation subdivision. Per our ordinance, they have a minimum of 15% of the parent tract have to be reserved for conservation. This then allows them to have smaller lots than 1 acre, but it's never supposed to be below 25,000. It's weird how our ordinance words it. Basically, it's never supposed to be below 30,000, but 30% of the lots can go below 30,000, but never less than 25,000. 30,000 is roughly 3/4 of an acre. 25 is right there in between a half and a third. Three of the lots in this proposal are under the 30,000, which is which the 30% would allow for 4 lots. So they comply with that regulation as well. Greenways and sidewalks. This is one of kind of the changes that was identified by PRG that you guys are kind of seeing differently. One is that in their previous proposal, having kind of a greenway easement through one to connect with the estates of Marvin Branch, and then kind of run along their existing side or their proposed sidewalk, and then tie into Marvin Road towards the Mecklenburg County line. Basically, what was instead of kind of having that go through their development, the applicants decided to, one, still propose a trail easement or some type of connectivity to the estates of Marvin Branch Trail, and then as well as propose and dedicate sidewalk along, their frontage along Marvin Road and Joe Carr. The full intent here is to, once the Marvin Loop's installed, that will be kind of the residents kind of connectivity, as well as then we'll have sidewalk down to pretty much almost the Mecklenburg County line, which will potentially one day provide us to work with Mecklenburg County to get connection over to their 6 Mile Creek Greenway across the border there. Tree preservation, the applicant is proposing both the exterior and interior tree preservation areas per our ordinance. The property will have a minimum of a 25-foot exterior tree preservation strip around the whole development. This is required per our ordinance, and the applicant is also proposing to save 10.5 acres in the exterior tree preservation strip. In this exterior tree preservation strip, a majority of that is along the northern, along lots 22 and 23. One is there's a 200-foot DEQ buffer there, but they also have identified areas within either the view shed or the common open space between them and the estates at Marvin Branch for tree preservation and mitigation. Common open space is the applicant is proposing to dedicate 7.5 acres as common open space. This exceeds the 15% minimum that I previously mentioned. Lot characteristics, they all conform with our minimum regulations for a conservation subdivision. Those are that, once again, the 30,000 square feet is the minimum lot, and outside of the 30%, that can be 25,000 square feet. Front yard setbacks 50, side yard setbacks 20, rear yard setbacks 40. For the lots that abut one another, those setbacks are 75. Minimum lot width is 130 feet. That's measured at basically the build upon line for the proposed structures. So those cul-de-sac lots obviously won't have 130 foot, but then where the home's built, and as you see on the site plan of their building footprint and setback line, that is a minimum of 130 because that's where they're only permitted to build upon. Drainage, this is another change from your guys' previous meeting. They're not proposing a BMP. This is basically because the total site will be under the 24% disturbance. They're going to basically utilize open channels and drainage swells to get the stormwater to the existing wetlands. The estates at Marvin Branch did something similar. This will be kind of more clearly identified in the preliminary plan and construction documents. But what they've done to kind of also offset, not making sure long-term, because they're not going to be necessarily the ones that are developing every single lot, putting impervious maximums on those lots per their CCRs. And that will basically make sure that it never exceeds the 24% total for the 47 acres. View shed. This is another kind of minor change. So basically, the applicant is requesting to reduce the view shed buffer to roughly 100 feet in some areas, 140 feet in some other areas. And mainly this is on the west and south side of the development. This is for two things. One, for their potential their right-of-way dedication for a future roundabout or future transportation improvements at the corner of Joe Carr and Marvin, as well as just because of the 200-foot DEQ buffer that runs along the right side property line between them and the estates of Marvin Branch, and the back property line between them and Mecklenburg County is required per the state. And that basically means they can't build within that 200 feet. And so it's basically asking to, they're going to be preserving all of that because of the state regulations. And so it's just moving the homes further where our ordinance requires a greater view shed and pushes the homes back. Any questions on that?
First of all, thank you for all the work you put into this. It shows you took a lot of time and you thought, and how you addressed the planning board last meeting. Thank you very much for that. That's very impressive. Concern, or not a concern, but the roundabout dedicated area, is that enough? Is that what was recommended? How was that? It looks small.
Our engineer's still been working on preliminary plans. But basically, what this is that the right of way that they're donating would be it would kind of basically force the hand of how the roundabout is then constructed. If any additional right of way is needed, it would have to either come from the property across the street from Joe Carr as well as potential on the Firethorn side. But this is a huge chunk and does kind of force how the roundabout will be constructed, which is kind of, a good thing. It also is a cost saving in the long run for the village as we move
Could
forward.
it go further into their neighborhood though? Because that lot, I can't remember the lot number, it looks like it's very close to the roundabout, lot 15, thank you.
Yes, absolutely. There's probably yeah, and that 140 feet is for the view shed. And obviously their minimum setback is for the home would then be 40 feet from that. So you got 180 feet minimum. But the goal is basically the way that they're proposing it is that it would then force the way that it's designed because the right of way is already being dedicated in there. And it would hopefully then, that's kind of why they've altered this even further because it was originally 100 feet, but part of that was brought up it was either last planning board or definitely during the PIM, and they shifted it to 140 feet along the Marvin side for that reason because they didn't want to potentially have the lot 15B taken any further. But the actual design and everything, I don't.
Yeah, okay. The other thing, appreciate the traffic concern on Marvin Road is still a concern. I appreciate no entrance on Marvin Road. That certainly helps in moving it down Joe Carr. But it's still a concern on a two-lane highway until that roundabout comes. And as we've seen, roundabouts don't come very quickly.
Yeah, the intent, and I have talked to our engineer and DOT about this, is that the roundabout would be funded through the village, just as we applied for funding for the Waxhaw Marvin Bonds Grove. If we get awarded that, obviously that's going to be kind of where some of the funds are going to be allocated, and that will kind of hinder when we will potentially apply for funding for this roundabout. With the right of way being dedicated and stuff, it's already been kind of initial conversations with DOT as well as our engineer to at least do some initial intersection improvements, meaning having potentially a light, but at least a left turn lane onto Marvin and potentially right turn lane coming, like having a split right and left on Joe Carr. So one, and those conversations, I mean, like I said, it seems like based off the traffic counts, the crash analysis and stuff, some of that like DOT would support. The goal is potentially have DOT fund a majority of that based off of the spot safety criteria. But having that right away, once again, does then potentially help us get initial improvements sooner. And that's kind of the goal.
That's good news. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, as long as those conversations are started, that's, I mean, we're already starting that conversation and you're not even close to that. So appreciate that. And
No, that's not what no.
There's an easement there, but
no driveway.
it is, yeah. So I mean, yeah, I'm just saying there is legally right now, there is a 30-foot easement.
Yeah, no, what I was saying is that basically, to your point of if the roundabout does take time, and especially just from a funding constraint from the village, it's going to be cheaper to do some initial improvements. And the biggest, once again, in any construction for the most part, it's fighting to get right away and stuff. And now that the village will have that does speed up that process and are able to work with DOT a whole lot easier. Correct. The last thing I'll kind of mention is that they are proposing a private road and a gate, which is not right now permitted per our ordinance. It's all kind of contingent upon the text amendment that we'll discuss at the end of the meeting, as well as, if council adopts that. That's already been expressed to the applicant. Basically, if they go and get approval and the text amendment doesn't, then they just have to amend their site plan, and that will be probably one of their conditions on their site plan, is that obviously if they're proposing a private road, if we outlaw that or don't allow that per the text amendment, then they will have to make them private and built to our standards. Is there anything do you want to go over?
It's like beautiful homes. They look like beautiful homes in the one picture that you showed. Yeah.
Very nice.
Any additional questions for either myself or the applicant?
I do have a question, just a hypothetical that you may or may not be able to answer, but just looking at the area where the roundabout dedication is,
Mhm.
there is a little bit of room on the other side of the road there, like a little bump in. But I mean, it's right, like Firethorn's, one of Firethorn's like, I mean, it looks like well, there's a cart path, but then there's an actual, is that an actual like hole?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty close to the road. So like,
Oh, you're right. Yeah, it's
um,
number 2 T box.
so my question, and this is, we might not know until we get deeper into this, but if Firethorn doesn't want to redesign hole number 2, because it's so close to the road, will NCDOT even have enough room with what is being given at this point?
Based off of experience with DOT, they will then come back with to the village with 2 options. One, that there will be no roundabout and it will just be initial intersection improvements, or we would have to go through the condemnation process to get the additional land if Firethorn does not come to an agreement with DOT on the cost and amount and so on.
By eminent domain.
Yeah.
So is there an option number 3 where, if Firethorn doesn't want to lose some of their land, could they potentially give money to our applicant here to take more of their land to put, to,
Look, that will all kind of be decided by DOT. Meaning like, once again, we're in the process of having our engineers have a 2D design of 1 of roundabout and 2 of those initial transportation improvements to further that conversation with DOT. Basically, DOT, when they do their analysis and stuff and make things work, they're going to see how much right of way is needed. And it could be identified where, yeah, they're going to take more from, the future development HOA or something, compared to Firethorn. I mean, they kind of run those analysis on what's needed, and having with what it is, the way I see it is you're going to have Joe Carr kind of correct itself to the right if you're coming towards Marvin. And then that will then provide some of that right of way that's already there on top of what's being donated, for the initial kind of roundabout. On top of the property across the street, at that corner is Derek's, our, park manager. It's flatter there. I know, like, obviously Derek is a, personal, connection, but he's expressed to me like he doesn't want to lose what land he can, but that's another thing that I can't necessarily control, because if DOT identifies that as the best option and makes an offer, there is no structure there. There is no, it's not like it, to your point with Firethorn, or potentially where it's altering the way they conduct business in the terms of how the golf course is created and set up. It's not altering how Derek's property is being utilized at that corner.
Just an FYI, that area, that grassy area from the fence to the street is not owned by Firethorn. That's owned by Firethorn Homeowners Association. So
Yeah.
this is a FYI.
So
It'd
then,
be like with Meadowlark as well, because
Yeah.
so.
So as long as they don't go past the fence, they don't have to deal with Firethorn.
so it just, I mean, like I said, it's all preliminary, but having this land donated is a big step. Because like I said, that's a cost saver for the village, as well as it does go ahead and spur some conversation on how it's designed and so on. So I definitely see it only benefits moving forward.
Yeah, I was just concerned more about lot 15, just if it moved further into their, could
Eh.
lot 15, I mean, and, not that this is the planning board's issue, but, they're donating land. So like, if they end up having to do even more, it's like, doesn't really seem fair that they've given and then now they're gonna take, you know what I mean? So,
And that's where basically the sketch plan is just them kind of blocking and dedicating potential right away. In their next step, the goal is to kind of have that preliminary 2D design of the roundabout. And that is where they will kind of actually identify the boundary of what they're proposing to donate. If it gets to the point of, hey, that 2D design based off, once again, just as hypothetical, is getting into like not necessarily into lot 15, but is getting close, they can still donate what they are proposing to an extent. And then when it gets to that point with us going through the funding process with DOT and getting, the roundabout as a official project, basically DOT then can come and say, okay, hey, yeah, based off of the right of way we've already have, like they might not be constructing lot 15. It might be an offer where basically the land or something like that is bought for the route. I mean, and so on. It's just, I don't have a firm answer. And
I was really just bringing it up
Yeah.
because you just don't know what's going to happen with NCDOT. So just keep it in the back of your head as you're moving forward and hopefully it will be fair to all, but that's not really how life works, is it? So if there are no other comments or questions, this is just a preliminary sketch approval. So if no one has any more conversation about it, if someone would like to make a motion to approve.
And there's also a motion in your system for this one.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say is that, this is based off your guys' recommendation, will be part of council's consideration at their January meeting. If council approves, the applicant can then move forward with their preliminary plat and construction documents, which will come back in front of you guys again, which some of that stuff will then be kind of identified. But basically the sketch plan, our subdivision's a 3-step process. The sketch plan is compliant with our ordinance. And so it basically then, allows them to move forward. And as long as they continue on, then we'll have a development there in the coming years.
Where is the motion? Which document? There's like 6 documents here.
Document, it's on the e-scribe screen.
It's on the what?
It's on the e-scribe screen.
What, under votes?
Near where your comment.
It technically is in the first document.
Number one.
Oh, there in the votes. Cool. Okay. That's awesome. Love when we geek out on technology.
Kelly, no, in front of you.
I'll make the motion, that's fine. You want me to read the whole thing?
Yes.
Okay. Then I go ahead and make a motion to recommend the approval of the major subdivision sketch for the plan for the estates of Marvin Acres, and find that the proposed subdivision complies with Village of Marvin Code of Ordinances and is consistent with the goals, recommendations of the Village of Marvin's 2020 Land Use Plan, other officially adopted village plans, and is reasonable and in the public interest and are consistent with the surrounding uses and zoning.
And I will second you. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Congratulations, gentlemen.
There you go.
You're on your way.
So
You as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
All right, moving on to discussion and recommendation of zoning text amendment application 2022-2 Marvin Women's Center.
is there someone in there?
Did we not already approve this?
So this is the Women's Center text amendment application. Once again, not much has changed. This is the actual formal full draft. It basically encompasses everything that we've discussed at our October and November meetings. I will kind of just briefly go through it, but just a reminder, this is a formal zoning text amendment application submittal that was submitted by Mr. Larry Shaheen, who on behalf of the Health Pregnancy Center. Their initial request was basically just simple. It was to amend the permitted uses in the Marvin Residential District and just add a word where churches, synagogues, and other places of worship and their customary related nonprofit uses. Based off of our some discussions with planning board as well as staff recommendation and consulting with our village attorney, there's the presented text is kind of encompasses all of those. So I'll kind of go through that now. Basically, the first one is amending the definitions, taking churches and house of worship. That's kind of a dated definition, updating it to religious institution. Basically, if you look how it said church and other places of worship, such as synagogues and stuff, in our already permitted uses, like basically that's all putting that in the religious institution definition and kind of simplifying the definition with the use. The second change is then amending 151.8 or 0.80, which is the Marvin Residential District language. It's changing now the use as religious institution as a special use, and then allowing their related accessory uses in accordance with section 151.068. Those two are just straightforward changes. The next one's kind of the big one. What I did with this proposal is, if you guys recall, 151.068 used to be, or was, or is, the special regulations for the small cell wireless stuff that we did earlier this year. Most ordinances, and this is something I've kind of been pushing for, have this section in their ordinance where it kind of allows for additional regulations for certain uses. We did this in the form-based code, but we didn't have a section in our current zoning ordinance for this. So I'm kind of trying to kill two birds with one stone with this text amendment. I'm trying to organize and also achieve what the original the applicant's submittal. So basically, it's amending 151.068 to now be titled Special Regulations for Certain Uses. Basically, this chapter regulates, whatever we determine moving forward, because there's going to be more of these that we'll probably add to this list. And what this is basically permitted uses that are either permitted with these regulations. So if somebody was to come to me for a for a zoning permit for, right now we don't have it, but let's just say, I'm trying to think of one that would be kind of straightforward. I guess like the small cell, if it meets those regulations, it has to comply with these regulations, then it can just be permitted with a permit. It's kind of like permitted by right, but just with those additional regulations. The other thing that this also does is then you can still make it a special use permit and still have these regulations. So that means they still have to get a special use permit approval from the village council. So what this has done now is basically the small cell and stuff's still in here. It's just its own little like subcategory of a use, and put in here religious institutions and their customary related accessory uses as additional requirements. Basically, kind of straightforward. This is, if you look at a lot of zoning ordinances, I mean, Huntersville, Davidson, Locust, I think Weddington, I would say about about 80 to 90% of the ordinances I looked at, especially with a lot of the 160D changes, this is all the same. And this is kind of what was used. The biggest thing here is, so what this is allowing is like, okay, religious institutions is allowed as a special use. Really, if they're not expanding their footprint, like for the two churches we have or a potential future church, a lot of this doesn't apply, but this then does encompass the accessory uses. So I'm on page 7 of the proposed text amendment, and I'll kind of go through this right here. It is, so it says religious institutions and their customary related uses such as religious institution offices, bookstores, serving the immediate congregation, parking lot, blah, 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 are allowed on the same or contiguous principal use, which the principal use is the church, shall be permitted whenever religious institutions are permitted. To diminish disruptive impacts by ensuring appropriate location design standards, development and expansion of religious institutions and their accessory uses in that should be in the residential district, shall meet the following standard. What this is basically stating is that if a use is permitted already, then it's permitted as an accessory use. It then allows uses that are not, that if they're not permitted but ran under the same umbrella of the church, they must comply. Basically, they'll have to get a special use permit, and they would comply with subsection B 1 and 2, which is the top of page B, or top of page 8. Which states no merchandise or merchandise display shall be visible from outside the building, and then no business or identification sign pertaining to the accessory use shall be visible from outside the building. And then it basically fully excludes making sure there's no radio tower press, so all that is prohibited as one of these accessory uses. This is pretty standard, typical. Basically, kind of the intent here is that it's all on the same property, falls under the umbrella of the church. Even because it was, for our conversations, it was very hard to define either nonprofit or specifically what certain nonprofits do. And that kind of alleviates that, because if they're working under the coordination of the church, and then they just meet this criteria. It'd be completely different if Village Hall, like if somebody wanted to rent out that and they were standalone from the church, then they have to comply, that whatever use that person is doing has to be permitted. But if they are working in association with the church, then it's permitted. And that's
The church.
correct.
Okay.
The only thing that's different from what's proposed here that I would, I guess first, is there any questions about any of this? The additional recommendation I have, and this was I talked to Chaplain, I think on Monday after this already was in your packets, is that regulation that says no business or identification sign pertaining to the accessory use shall be visible from outside the building. I personally, from a staff recommendation, am okay with allowing a sign, but it must be, it's not a standalone sign. It has to be part of the existing signage for the church. Kind of similar how the counseling center is for the Wedding Methodist Church. I think it says "and counseling center" under like their ground mounted sign. Same concept. It can't be a standalone sign that has like, for this specific applicant, like Marvin's Women's Center, where the Village Hall sign used to be. It can't be standalone. It would have to be under the.
So if they have an 8x12, they can use 2x12 and have 6x12. They have to use the same sign, but they can divide it up however they want.
Correct. As long as it still complies with the permitted, the sign regulations in this, in our ordinance overall, which is there's a, square foot or square footage maximum depending on the use or the type of sign, so on. But
We're going to allow them to put their sign up as they want for
Part of yes, basically a part of the common sign plan for the overall development.
Understood.
That's the only recommendation that I have, changing that. Some
What
ordinance,
is the limit on it? I mean, let's say they have multiple, you know, I don't
So-
know, 12.
yeah, so basically what's covering that is our sign ordinance already.
Okay.
Like our sign ordinance right now for a ground mounted sign, which is what the church has, is a square footage maximum, which I think is 60 square feet, so 6 by 10.
No, I'm saying if it's 8 by 12, I don't know, 1 by 12, 1 by 12, 1 by 12, 1 by 12, you have 8.
Yeah.
Okay, that's gonna look horrible.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
Comply, it sounds like, but it would look horrible.
I'm trying to think how to wordsmith, like,
Is there not any, I mean, are no directional signs allowed? Because it has a different driveway. So, I mean, while I understand not wanting an additional sign, we also don't want people turning into the church thinking that's where they're going and then having to pull back out again and, do that quick little pull in. I mean,
it's also kind of up to you guys. I read one ordinance specifically and I printed out the additional change. I don't know. It might be honestly in one of your guys that I might have stapled it to one of your guys' handouts. We can allow one ground mounted sign and put a maximum size on it. It's kind of completely up to you. Because to your point, yes, I mean, directional signage, because it'd still be advertising. But at the same time, like, it's up to you guys in this recommendation, because I do, in my opinion, and I think a sign should be allowed. I don't think it should be a standalone, full-on sign that complies with our ordinance, but if it's something that's under that or part of their common sign plan with the church, I do not have an issue with that. The biggest thing is I don't want them to have, any type, like have signage on the building or just signs that would comply with our ordinance for if it was a standalone use, because it's not. Because it's not permitted per se. I mean, it's not a permitted stand.
Sign, directional sign, or do you want a
No.
directional sign on the 8 by 12, which we're using as an example?
well, I mean, I think it has a different driveway and it has a different address. So that's the issue. Like if it's all on one sign, the sign is technically on the property. I mean, both ones are their property, but like,
So you're proposing
It's-
a new additional sign.
but a small one that either has like just the address on it or like something so that people know that this is the address and the entrance of the women's center, and then that is the address of the church.
I mean, you guys used to do.
Yeah.
Little signs that, I mean.
And that post is still there. And that's why, once again, if we're okay with a standalone and put a size maximum at it,
I'd rather just have one standalone.
one standalone than part of the common sign plan.
I think we don't want to muddy up Marvin Road with multiple signs. One,
I just think it's going to be confusing for people.
No, like I said, this is kind of that's why I wanted to bring it. If you guys didn't have a problem with how I outlined everything, this is the one thing that I wanted to kind of get some guidance on, because I was like,
I mean, if they wanted to cut a drive, like if they wanted all entrance, one entrance into the church and then they cut a drive across the lawn. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and they, and then they go, that's where they go to their parking, to the women's center parking. But I mean, like,
inside, not on Marvin Road, but inside.
right, but in the interior. I mean, but now we're cutting down green space and adding more gravel. So,
Mhm.
I mean, it's 6
I
of
think
9.
the safer approach is to just say, no extra signs are permitted, and then let the applicant come to us. We don't know what their sign requirements are.
And I was meaning more about,
I'm trying to draft this for one person, which really, we're writing law, or writing rules for.
yes, one example. Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. I just meant for this particular one, because they're set up in a weird way.
Town of Stallings, for example, uses the same language, and they're the ones that I saw. It says signage shall be limited to a single pole sign, subject to regulations of Article 17. I can do something similar, like saying one single either pole. I think ours has ground mounted monument, post identification, basically allowing just one sign and then subject those same requirements of what's already in our ordinance. To your point, because then it's already there.
So one extra sign or one sign total?
One sign total.
That's what
Yeah.
So you guys are still, okay, you would still want one sign total to be part of the comment, like be a part of the existing church sign, or it's one standalone sign is what I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, one. Not,
No, that's what I'm asking. But do you want the one to be a standalone that specifically identifies the tenant,
what was the other option?
one to be a part of the existing
Banks Presbyterian.
Banks Presbyterian sign? Because I've got to put it in the ordinance, because right now, like it's either no signage, a signage part of a common, part of the existing common sign plan of the principal use, or one standalone sign to comply with our sign ordinance regulations.
Could you address it in the like non-contiguous sites section? So like if it's all one site, they can attach to the existing signage, but if it's,
Not attached to it. I mean, if, let's say they're allowed 96 square feet, I think what it's saying now, they can divide up that 96 square feet however the way they want to. They just can't exceed 96 square feet.
With the standalone?
No. You understand what I'm saying now?
Yeah.
Okay.
And let me just, so, go ahead.
I think pragmatically, those buildings are awfully darn close together. It'll probably be okay. Right, like working on a college campus here where we've got all of these different buildings, people will figure it out. I don't
Yeah.
know that we're gonna need like a wayfinding solution to get across the parking lot. And worst case scenario, if they park the wrong place, much like we did when we were working out of the parsonage, I think we figured it out. You know what I mean? So I think that and I don't think we need a bigger sign because we don't want to get in the habits of having, borderline billboards going through Newtown Road. Although if people were staring at it, they might slow down. So that's something to consider. But I do think I think one sign, the size that we have, and then if it gets to the point where we've got 26 acres that are being figured out, and then they need to put internal signs on their driveways, we'll figure it out. But it's probably okay.
And this is where I'm looking at our ordinance, and sign section is one of those, my top 5 that I really want to rewrite, and I'm trying to get, we'll be doing some of that in the next text amendment, but potentially, since it's a non-residential use in a residential district, if they were to update, like, you have to get a sign permit. Bob's on. You'd have to get a sign permit, and potentially they would then have to get DRB approval. I know it's definitely for anything commercial, and I know we have to do it for Village Hall, but it's kind of this tricky of how one, how our DRB ordinance reads, but 2, of how our sign ordinance reads. But overall, yes, I'm fine with either. I think to keep it simple and kind of mirror what you were saying is that we just allow it to be part of the common signage plan and they can figure it out from there. Where then it does not, you don't have a standalone sign, you're not separating it. In my opinion too, that makes sure it's under the church's umbrella. And it's not a different business to an extent.
that's a really good point.
Allowable under the existing signage.
Yes.
Okay.
What's the action on this?
We still need to talk about small cell telecommunications.
So what?
Didn't we need to talk about the small cell telecommunications?
I mean,
section?
the other, no, I mean, like overall in the text amendment, all that did was move. Small cell was its own thing. None of the language changed in the small cell stuff. It's just under, like I said,
It's a reorganization. How
Yeah.
it's just.
Okay,
it's a better way to put it. Yes.
just to clarify.
No action here then?
Well, no, I would
Yeah,
make
we have
a,
Other than that.
Yeah, we have to, we have to recommend to approve or not.
Feels like it's your night.
quick question.
Oh my gosh, you can't do all of them. Come on, y'all. Somebody put your name on something.
I don't have it. I'm operating under a different one.
Here, I can show it to you. Put your glasses on. Okay. Hold up. Michael's gonna do it.
Okay. Where is it?
It's right here.
This one?
Mhm.
Okay, so I just have to recommend.
You just save what
I move to recommend approval of the proposed text amendment for ZTA 2022-2 contingent upon village attorney review and find that the proposed zoning text amendment is consistent with the recommendations and goals of the Village of Marvin and 2020 Land Use Plan, other officially adopted village plan, and is reasonable and in public interest.
well done.
My glasses work.
All set, sir.
Yeah, like-
All in favor?
I,
So moved.
We're making good time tonight.
shh, now,
Don't
that's like
jinx us.
saying he hasn't allowed
That's
it
the
yet,
kiss of death. I
you know? Don't.
Way to go.
So
All
close.
right, discussion and recommendation of gated subdivision and private road zoning text amendment.
Okay. This one can be as quick as you guys want it, or because this one has been a pain in my butt. And what I mean by that, it's just because of the way our zoning and subdivision ordinances are, it's complicated to get everything consistent and amend the sections where it doesn't contradict itself like it is now. So what's presented in front of you guys tonight is basically, and I'm, also, depending on the discussion, I'm looking for a potential recommendation. Council has called for a public hearing for both of these text amendments. But ultimately, like, this is not the formal all change one like you just saw. And the reason being is because there's a lot of sections, if you guys are good with the content here, that I have to just go in and just like, where a section that says like private roads aren't allowed. If you guys are making the recommendation to allow this text amendment, then basically I'll have to go and amend that section if council adopts it, saying that private roads are allowed, and wordsmith. So
Back to us even after this.
I wasn't, unless you guys, yeah, because this is the base text. I mean, this is like the base text. It's saying, I'll kind of go through the memo that I've printed out for you guys, but basically there's 4 major changes here. So the first one would be adding a definition, once again, either as a gated subdivision or gated community. I don't care. I didn't know if you guys have a preference, if one should, but basically whatever the definition that you guys recommend, either gated subdivision or gated community, will be what's used in the rest of the ordinance. But basically, gated subdivision is subdivision which has an access to the gate, which access to the gated subdivision is restricted by gates or other devices. Or gated community, a subdivision, neighborhood, or residential development to which entry is restricted to residents and their gates, often includes barriers such as gates, security personnel, fence, and or walls. Do you guys have a preference of which one of those? Or it can still be, I can take the definition from gated community and put it into gated subdivision. I basically pulled,
Security personnel was a gated community. If the developer wants to have a security guard there, it's not gate.
correct.
Why would I don't like security personnel?
So do we just want to keep it simple with the first definition of gated subdivision?
And
I didn't want to make this I was going with gated subdivision. I think one of the ordinances I looked at had gated community. Like I said, it just kind of builds on it, but at the same time, I think gated subdivision does just cover our basis and it does stay consistent with what the intent of what I'm trying to achieve here.
I agree.
So keep it gated, so gated subdivision. Okay.
I'm speaking for it, but
would someone try to argue what other devices are? Drone,
No, it's,
subject not identified.
no, I think with the term, with it being a gated subdivision, I think that's self-explanatory.
is it other similar devices? Concerned about
Yeah.
weird devices.
Access control or whatever.
Yeah, other access control devices. I'll do it that way.
Yeah, gated, the gated community one, it just seems the fences and or walls. It just sounds more like prison rather than,
Yep. Okay, the first change is going to be to amend the definitions and include a new definition for gated subdivisions to read a subdivision in which access to be gated to the gated subdivision, I guess I could take out gated, but is restricted by gates or other access control devices. To this, okay. The second change would then to add gated subdivision as a special use in the Marvin Residential District. Basically, this is then providing and once again, they would have to go through a process to get a special use permit, and this does include for either new development or existing. Once again, those two are kind of straightforward. The third change on page 2. So since we just now, since the intent's for council to approve the Women's Center tax amendment or parts of it at least, it would at least be the part of making 151.168 special regulations for certain uses. So then we add gated subdivisions into that. I have broken this out into new and existing. This is kind of following the same parameters that was presented to you guys, I think, at the October meeting. Basically, the new can be proposed part of the subdivision. They don't necessarily have to get a special use permit for that because it's part of their kind of approval process through the subdivision process. But the parameters are still the same. And then the existing would have to then would have to update their final plat, because if it's an existing development and the roads are publicly dedicated, they would have to amend their final plat to then read that they'll be privately maintained and put a special note on that final plat that the HOA or developer is responsible for maintaining this road. And they will also then have to get a special use permit and meet these parameters, which basically these parameters are that the developer, homeowners association will provide an access code to the gate for emergency contact for the fire, EMS, and sheriff's department. An annual inspection and test of the gate shall be performed and the results submitted to the village. That's basically just making sure that their gate's functionally working. So for EMS purposes as well as their residents. It's just a way to make sure that if this is going to be on the HOA in the long run, that they're making sure it's that it's working. The third is should there be a problem with the operation of the entrance gate, the gate shall remain open and accessible until the gate is repaired and tested. Basically, that's so I don't get calls that, hey, I can't get into my neighborhood.
Or you can't get out.
Or you can't get out. That's not my problem. You as an HOA or you're a developer or you. So but basically if that were to happen.
That really does make it a prison though.
Yeah. If that were to happen, basically that means I can issue a violation to the HOA saying, hey, it's supposed to be open because it's not functioning properly until you guys get it fixed. And that also then kind of covers why they're supposed to have it inspected and so on each year.
Bring the food.
Let's do the same thing. Yeah, way faster than we do. Yeah.
For any homeowner association that is found to be in violation shall be required to maintain a service agreement with a qualified contractor to ensure year-round maintenance and submit a service agreement to, that should be Village Hall. But once again, if we're allowing this, it's on them. It's not on the village to figure out. 5, the maintenance and upkeep of any subdivision, private roads and gate and development shall be the sole responsibility of the developer and or duly incorporated and active homeowners association. So what this is also meaning, so existing residential development, Winmore is the one that is looking to do this. For them to go through as an existing development, they would have to update and provide us a copy of their CCRs that it states that they're responsible for X, Y, and Z, the gate, the roads, whatever. As well as enter probably into a maintenance agreement or just have a maintenance plan and agreement with the village that once again identifies the sole responsibility. We already require maintenance agreements for conservation subdivisions. I will say, I don't know if some of them have been recorded in the past or not, but this is achieving that because I'm making sure that it is
Part of the
getting recorded and it's a legal document. Once again, it's taking the village out of the picture if said homeowner association wants to do so. Finally, it says prior to the approval of the final plat and or special use permit, the developer shall provide written evidence that the developer has created a homeowners association whose responsibility it will be to maintain common areas and the private streets within the development. Such evidence shall include field copies of the articles of incorporation, declarations of homeowners association, bylaws, and maintenance agreements. That's really for the last one. I might need to wordsmith that, but once again, the intent's that we make sure all this is upfront. And don't worry about it. The biggest change from what you got from the actual regulations compared to what was presented in October, I didn't put a limit on the number of houses. Basically, if it's one ingress, egress, one road in and out, and this was per some of the discussions with council, the opportunity should be provided. I mean, if the roads are in either in the maintenance system for either NCDOT or us, those applicable said homeowners association would have to go through the process to have that right of way abandoned and turned back over to them. That's a whole nother separate process. It's not ordinance related. It's regulated through the general state statute. And we do, if we don't have a road abandonment policy, I found a draft of one. Don't know if it ever got approved. But once again, it's pretty straightforward. State statute lays out what the process is, and they would have to do that. If it's a new development and they propose it as a private, you don't have to necessarily worry about the right of way, abandonment and so on. So those are kind of the major changes in the final 4 changes. It's kind of adding that same criteria as review criteria for council when they're considering a special use permit for really kind of the existing. It kind of has those same parameters outlined there, and just kind of putting it in one place.
I have a question about that. At the very bottom of that page, why does paragraph special use permit only apply to existing houses and not new development?
So the reason I did that is because, and this can be, once again, I don't really have a preference here. Existing developments are making a change to what their original common development plan was. If people bought into that neighborhood that it was supposed to be, public roads. Well, that's kind of the thing that they'll have to do is all homeowners will have to kind of sign a letter and everything. New development, they're going, just as we did, I mean, they're proposing that final road with their submittal. I don't think it's necessary because it's either like I don't think it's necessary to have a special use permit because you guys can make it like a condition or recommendation that the roads not be private in their submittal. And then they can move forward with a public road and then get a special use permit, or it's just like council's already kind of given, the parameters are the same for the new. They still have to comply with those same regulations. You just don't have to get a special use permit. I just think it's kind of a extra step for new development.
As long as they comply with the same regulations, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, they do.
So what I'm not saying for new or existing is an area for, if I turn in, should I be able to find a place to turn around? So for an existing, that may cost them some significant, they may have to give up some land, whatever, common space, green space, right? Because you need to turn around. And so for a new, I think it should be in the ordinance that says you must provide that up front. Let them know.
I can add that. I believe and this is, as I've said, I can't remember if I put in your guys' packets. We have that section in our ordinance that has its signs and the commercial, conditional, and mixed use districts or something like that, and randomly has all these subdivision entrance monument regulations within that district. I didn't write it. That's part of that fix is going to be part of this overall text amendment. But I can add that I think it's a minimum of 3 stacking and a turnaround provided. I've seen anywhere from 3 to 4, or they do footage. It's either 100 to 200 feet. Yeah. Add stacking requirement. So I would be, just to clarify, if we're going to make a recommendation on this night, I'll be adding that stacking requirement for both new and existing And it would be to provide stacking for, do we want to do 3 or 4? Let me go see if it's already kind of outlines it in our ordinance real quick.
Blacktop Road, because
Oh, I love our ordinance.
my neighbors are considering putting up a gate because of the roundabout. But like, we don't have turnaround space, but like, it's a private road, by the time they get to the gate, so they shouldn't be on that road. unless
Yes.
Business being on that road, you know what I mean? So, I don't know.
So that's,
I want to say everyone around here has 3. I could be wrong.
I think it is 3. Like I said, it's kind of, we already have these parameters kind of here.
so as.
And that's part of the amendment,
So
like
no
taking this, and putting it with this.
Sign there, no outlet.
Um,
Well, right now it says private road.
It says, okay.
We're getting this.
So, true. They're reading their text messages, yeah.
Maintenance, right upon which,
So that's.
I mean, all ours says is the gates will not constitute a traffic safety hazard or cause undue congestion on, or traffic buildup on roads, neighborhoods and surrounding subdivision. I'm pretty sure the stacking's typically 3. I've got my notes right here.
Are you all okay with a 3-car stacking requirement?
And provide, and provide a turnaround. Yeah. Like I said, most ordinances do it, they either say 3 stacking or it's like 100 feet or 200 feet or 4. It's typically 3 and then they'll have to provide a turnaround. So like Winmore has right now, I think a central, I can't remember if that was central meeting when you come in.
Is there interesting?
Yeah. Let me see if how our ordinance defines stacking.
I don't know if there's a common, I don't know if there's a common definition for like standard car length, but you could be putting on something like that.
Fifth. Well, it's also their sketch plan. So the gate and stuff's not on there. That will be though in their next step. So it's kind of, it's going to allow on the private roads, but the regulations that we put into this is that they'll have to comply with it in their preliminary plat and construction documents and final plat. Our ordinance states that a 50-foot setback must allow at least 3 vehicles to safely pull off the street and stack in front of the closed gate.
50 foot and 3 cars.
50 foot and 3, so,
So which either is
so what, the smallest it would be was 68 feet if I'm doing, is that what it says?
No, it's 50 feet that must allow at least 3 vehicles to safely pull out.
Yeah, I mean, what's the biggest car? 12 feet?
Well done, or what is it? It's like 220 inches, which is gonna be, it's like 11 feet.
Okay. So 50 feet's plenty.
Yeah, and that would allow also if you ever had like a UPS truck or something
So it is.
trying to enter.
Not just 3 cars, 50 feet that allows for 3 cars.
Yep.
I was gonna recommend.
What I'm gonna do, that's already in the existing, and like I said, we have existing kind of regulations on this. It's, if you guys make the recommendation, it's to do this, and then I would take what was there and kind of make sure it's either covered or what's not is still implemented, and reorganized, basically. But I would make sure, so it would be a stacking requirement of a minimum of 50 feet. And 3 cars, how that ordinance reads. But other than that, I mean, like I said, this is the proposed text. as I mentioned, if you guys go to the final page in the printout, I said may need to update / approve a road abandonment policy process. Once again, really the intent of this ordinance is either for new or for roads that are not already in our system or DOTs. If they're in DOTs and want to go through that process, great. But if you think about the neighborhoods here, one ingress egress means one, yes, the preserve is one ingress egress, but we already maintain their roads. Like that would be a very, on top of having 68, 69 homeowners sign off on one to take over the road and put a gate up. So this is really kind of catered towards new development on top of smaller development. That's, I mean, really win more, but no, I took that out. And that was per council's recommendation. Because if you're having one ingress egress, Innisbrook's another example. They're one ingress egress, but they're in DOTs. If they want to go through that process with DOT and get it, well, then they would have to still come back and get the special use permit as an existing development. But it's, yeah,
Not easy.
it's not, yeah, it's not going to be easy for existing development that roads are already being maintained by a public entity. But I also mentioned here is that would obviously need to update all sections of the ordinance, specifically anything referencing subdivision, rural entry gates, private roads, private public roads. The sections I've identified specifically is the subdivision definitions, the subdivision streets and roads, specifically 150.66 E and J. I know those are in that memo in your guys' packets, but it states like no access control devices over public right of way or something like that on top of no private roads allowed. Once again, basically the reason that's not fully in here because it's literally would just be going in and making it consistent with this proposal. Subdivision, entry walls and structures and signs, lot to abut a public street. Right now, our ordinance requires all lots to abut a public street. It'd basically be in there that all lots must abut a public street or approved private street. But basically, once again, you're not going to really run into any non-conforming cases here because if it's already a private street and a house that fronts it, no worries. If it's not, this kind of then also allows that. Like if Meadowlark had an existing, I guess, undeveloped lot, it would kind of just cover that. It would just once again make it more consistent. And finally, standards developments located in conservation subdivisions and that infamous section I mentioned, signs permitted in the CC district and mixed use district, but it's basically once again wordsmithing and updating and reorganizing to follow what is being proposed tonight. Any questions?
My question is, are we still stuck on the minimum, like maximum number of lots or?
I took that out from the original. And one was, to your point, what are we going to set that? Two, and then council recommended one ingress egress kind of covers that. You have a few developments that have a good amount of homes off of one ingress egress, but once again, then that's a whole nother, based off the parameters already in place in this proposal, it would be a very huge hurdle for them to do.
But that's their job, that's not
Yeah.
ours, that's their issue.
Correct. Correct. And the other thing that this does is, I know when I first brought this to you guys, we talked about POW bill funding and so on. One ingress egress, either if it's a road that, for example, in the estate Marvin Acres proposal, the village is not going to get a significant amount of that from having a half mile of road. And same thing for Glenmore. The biggest thing that I wanted to make sure is one, you don't have that way where it makes it easy to an extent for neighborhoods that are already in our system, where then that we lose, as well as potential into DOT roads. And that's really covered in the long term with the one ingress egress. Because I mean, and not that we're trying to exclude any neighborhoods, but if you have these roads that are already a cut through, not necessarily cut through, but like have multiple ingress egress points, like one, why would you want to get one? But two, it just creates a huge burden. And I think we're covered here.
I think you've done a nice job of also adding in the information about maintenance agreement and making sure that all of the homeowners agree to this
Yep.
And there's proof of that, so.
And that's kind of, I know this was brought up with the council before I started. That was the biggest thing, is that if you can really get however many homeowners you have, then why should we sit here?
Mhm.
So, like I said, I think this covers, I did a lot of research on this. Probably more than I should have, but, I went through a bunch of different municipality ordinances. Some, yes, they only allow public roads, and so this just outlaws this. But a lot, for the most part, have these same type of parameters. I mean, even the city of Charlotte does allow private roads. I mean, it's kind of the ones that didn't were the bigger middle sized municipalities. I think it's because it's a POW bill thing and inconsistency thing. The ones that are so big doesn't care. And the ones that are smaller, like I said, it's not going to significantly impact your POW bill funding and consistency. And the other biggest thing I forgot to mention in this, if you guys didn't read, is that new development they have to still be built to our standard at first. And if it does allow an avenue, if a developer proposes it, put it in. If they want to come back and petition, really the only thing is, hey, as long as your road's up to standard and your gate's taken down, we'll take it over. So. Other than that, if there's no other questions, I'll just be looking for a recommendation, which I think Austin's got that updated in your system.
Yeah, we changed the motion earlier to. Should see stickers from that.
So if we go forward with this motion, we're also going to add the stacking and turnaround.
So in there, it says as amended, because we knew you all would make changes. So that would.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Ken,
We don't have to.
I think,
You got it.
what's that?
I have a copy of these.
Everyone's got to take a turn.
I can read it, someone can say something.
That works too.
So the recommended motion is to recommend approval of the text amendment as amended, contingent upon attorney review, and to authorize staff to make minor changes to other sections to ensure consistency.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Sweet.
Man, you guys are kind of doing like too well, like we're just moving things through. It's
Well,
just-
oil machine.
We're not used to seeing that progress.
Yeah.
All right, well, moving on, planners update, Marvin Loop and Heritage District.
Yeah, I just wanted to give you guys an update. So Marvin Loop, if you guys aren't aware, we received a grant last year. It's a reimbursement grant with NCDOT / the federal Department of Transportation. And we are moving forward with that. We have our contract approved with DOT. It is going to be a 3 to 5 year thing. There's so many hoops and stuff to jump through with federal funded projects, and so much like tracking and submittal stuff you have to do. But we will be posting an RFQ probably like the 1st of January for the first phase of that, which is the preliminary engineering and environmental analysis. For those that don't know what the Marvin Loop is, it's basically to complete the sidewalk from the preserve all the way up here, down Newtown, down Marvin Road, and to Joe Carr. It might be a saddle, but it would basically almost get it completed, and then we'd only have a portion, which some of this would be achieved through the estates of Marvin Acres sidewalk donation. I think the estates of Marvin Branch also dedicated an easement at the front of their property for sidewalk. The goal is then to get it on Joe Carr to connect with, is it Marvin Creek?
It ends at, I think, is it Wheatfield and Marvin Creek? It's one of the areas, it's one of the entrances to Marvin Creek is where it currently ends.
Yeah. So the goal is then you'll have this full pedestrian walk.
Actually, a loop.
So,
Marvin Loop will be a loop.
yep. Say what? But I think it's
Marvin Creek.
Good point.
it's going to be a really cool project, providing that as well as, the tie-in with development in the Heritage District and just being able to provide that amenity for the residents and future development. I think it's really cool. I was top of it's 60% being funded by DOT. So, so, yeah, so it's not in the scope. But just wanted to give you guys that update. The other,
Whether it be asphalt or concrete.
I think it's asphalt.
That's what the progressively is.
It,
More maintenance on it.
I think the way the actual scope is, and I want to say it's actually both. I want to say that the intent and what we submitted in our application does have for sidewalk because it, kind of the intent, especially to the Heritage District, that is to have sidewalk. And then in the other areas is actually to just be the asphalt. I want to say both of them were quoted from linear footage, but I think it's really the scopes for pedestrian improvements to connect the existing side pedestrian facilities. So.
That's something that makes your. It's also. Stops.
Well, it stops all the way up to Serve.
It goes from the intersection design all the way to up to the other side of Mark Road.
Bus parking. Back entrance.
You can go, once you go past the school, you're on an asphalt trail that goes through the trees. You curve all the way so far.
Okay, well, we're still.
It's a good approach for the walk.
There's a potential for. Fish.
Where I guess it's talking about where it's parking, where it's facing.
There has been some flooding issues there in the past that we've done some breaking work through that tree line in the past year or so. But we recently have had the asphalt bog sealed.
Bog seal?
It's basically any cracks or rise, you seal them to prevent future damage, the future erosion, future damage. It's
Keep going.
Women haven't started putting that on their face yet.
not you don't get a car on the face.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
But, so yeah, that'll be moving forward. And basically, if you guys recall too, the way the Heritage District set up is that they're, the development's supposed to put sidewalk pedestrian facilities in. Basically, if it ties into where like, some of this development starts happening, before we get to the actual construction of the project, and basically like a fee in lieu, we use those funds because it's a 60-40 match. We would use basically the funds received at the end lieu and just pay as part of the grant construction costs, but or they install it and that cuts the grant cost down. So big project taking up my time. But yeah, this goes back before me. I just get the minutes right now. So
I mean, a federal grant though is a big deal, so.
yep. So it's exciting and I'll probably, we'll have probably a preliminary, I mean, we've got like a sketch because it's what we had to submit, but we'll probably have like preliminary engineering and stuff done. Definitely probably by this time next year.
Is the PRG board gonna be helping you with that?
They should. I mean, because I'll probably we'll be hiring a consultant to kind of provide these initial documents. Then we'll probably go to PRG, even planning board, and maybe even council to get some initial, feedback, and then I will also take it to those relative boards before we move forward in phase 2, which is really the right of way acquisition. Just to make sure that hey, this is the design that we want, where we want it. Material, whatever. And so that will probably go through everybody before we can continue to move on. So everybody will see it. And I don't know to the extent of how involved PRG will be, but they definitely will be involved more. Yeah. The next thing is Marvin Heritage District update. So John Solons is still waiting sewer approval for their pump station. From my understanding, it should be between the county commissioners' second January meeting or the February 1st meeting. Hearing mixed things. I know that the county had some turnover on the board and in the administration. So I don't know really what's going to be the outcome of that. I know that the county has adopted an ordinance for pump stations. I'll have a process basically for them to consider them. Once again, from my understanding, talking to Ben, is that they meet all those parameters. It's just once again get into the commissioners for consideration. The other thing I'll mention is that I have had some meetings with Mr. Fincher, the Crane Store owners, and Scott White, and I guess Will. But
Who is Scott White?
he owns the house beside the Crane Store.
Yeah. Is that someone living there or is that?
It's the
Yeah, it's just got a lot of shrubbery and stuff in the front, so it's hard to tell if someone's actually there.
But I did have some pretty good conversations with Tim. Once again, he's ready to go. It also just, it's all contingent upon sewer utility. I'm scheduling a meeting with the county. I think he's got about 4 or 5 different gravity feed options. I mean, really, it's a gravity feed most likely to Broadmoor, but it's then getting easements. But the biggest thing is, if the county helps and kind of definitely provides us good insight and gets all that, then I truly expect him to have his documents and stuff ready for the spring of next year to start going through the rezoning process. It's just he doesn't know if he's going to be able to connect or how much it's going to cost him, and that's all contingent upon how he's got to do it, and then that's going to lead the discussion further. But there's 2 simple tie-ins. I don't know if his engineer can make it work / if the county will allow him. My initial conversation with the county like last year was that it would gravity feed the Broadmoor, but then it's kind of getting those easements for the utility connect the infrastructure to connect to gravity feed to the Broadmoor pump station. So
Is his house on septic?
who?
White?
Well, why everything this side will gravity feed back here and be good. I was talking about Tim's property.
Oh, Fincher's property. Oh, sorry.
So
I'm white.
we'll probably know more, especially at our January meeting with Jones Homes, as well as myself and Mr. Fincher will have discussed with the county by then. So can kind of give you guys an update and also what to expect moving forward with just development proposals. But I think Tim, if it works out, will be the next domino to fall. And then I fully see those smaller properties in Will and White and the Crane Store to kind of feed off of that and tie into it. Say what? Well, everything would gravity feed to Broadmoor and then be pumped into that force main. Yeah. So.
And is that pump station set in Broadmoor?
It was approved by the village as well as their sewer stuff's been approved by the county, and they're doing initial land development right now.
What, 2 months ago?
Last month, the 1st of November, I think. Either way. So that's all I got, unless you guys have any questions on anything.
I don't have a question, but did you see the news about the state potentially regulating corporate single family homes and rental properties? So I didn't read the whole article, but basically the state's looking into potentially regulating a percentage of like how many corporations or how many homes a corporation can own in the rental market.
Be curious to see where that goes.
Yeah, and this goes to what the mayor was talking about at our last joint meeting.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely want to look into that. And I think because it's kind of a new concept, like how American Homes for Life did Barcroft, that developers are either developing all the homes and keeping them and renting them because they can have profit long-term.
Yeah, it's popping up everywhere. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to point it out because if you wanted to, I mean, I don't know if North Carolina would ever approve it, but it might be interesting to look at the language that they're trying to get passed to see if it's something that we want to consider here in Marvin prior to that happening.
Well, right now, we can't, the state already has regulations on how we can regulate rentals. Most likely what they would be doing would be either I don't know, they would be doing it from two different ways. One could be from a zoning authority to an extent where they say that X, Y, and Z and the state statutes, and then we can, it can be broad where that we can kind of play within that authority or kind of be very defined, and that's what the authority we have. Or they'll regulate it at a business level to an extent, and it will then offset kind of how it's regulated. So no, I definitely will look into that, and we'll see where it goes, and if it definitely has an impact or if it's something that we need to get on, then we definitely will.
It's a big area right now. A lot of town.
Yeah.
Other than the property that you've asked me to proceed with, no. We're planning to have a conversation with the Chimneys at Marvin in January on potential annexation. They've said they're interested, but it's a matter of actually getting in the room with them and seeing where the conversation leads. It's always a hard sell just because of how the state legislature changed the laws in 2011. So, wish us luck. What?
His property.
The one, yeah, it said the one that you're working with me on. Yeah. Will has been working with me to get a lot annexed on Newtown that's near the park. That's in the process now, and we'll be in that lot. We'll have, we'll come to y'all next month for a zoning recommendation, and that'll probably be annexed in February should council approve.
All right. I don't think we have any action items.
I yield back.
All right, board comments.
Well, I'll go ahead and start. I wish everybody
Makes
a
me,
healthy, new-
by the way.
mics are on, happy and healthy new year. Great Christmas, whatever holidays we're going to celebrate. It's a pleasure working with you all. And again, appreciate everything that staff does, and Bob, your support as well. Thank you.
We're good out here.
I will say same. So safe travels if you're traveling. If not, enjoy, and hopefully everybody gets some time to relax before the new year. So thank you all.
Same. Wish everybody a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And want to appreciate Hunter for all of his work. Seemed like he's been really working hard with a lot of stuff lately. So, and hope you guys have a great New Year, and we'll see you then.
What he said.
Yeah.
Michael?
Same thing, happy holidays. I think we, as a board, had a great year, great working with everybody. We get along, we get stuff done, and let's hope we can continue that in 2023, and I'm sure we can.
Absolutely. Happy birthday to Marcus, who's not here, and happy holidays to everyone. Thank you, gentlemen. Again, excellent job. What you guys presented today was, when we don't have a lot of comments, it means you're doing your job well and going above and beyond. So well done. Bob?
You're all saying my sentiments. I'm sorry I got here late, but
Oh, we
I
can't
got
hear.
here for the most important.
Oh, hold on. I realize what it is. I've got to turn up the volume on the TV.
That thought, Bob.
Thank you.
Bob, you will be doing interpretive dance, please. Start, go.
Speakers.
All right, Bob, you want to try again?
Okay, I was gonna say my sentiments exactly as you all have said, and I'm sorry I got there late, but I was glad to get in on what are some of the most important topics that the council will be dealing with. So thank you for all your hard work, and look forward to a great new year with you folks.
Great, thanks. Do you guys have any comments before we adjourn? All
Thank you
right.
guys for everything.
Yeah, thank you guys. Merry
Oh,
Christmas.
could someone make a motion? Adjourn. Want to go second? Everyone's rushing to second. Okay, you can choose Will or anyone. Then all in favor? So moved. We're out. Last meeting of the year.
7:35, not bad.
45, silly me. Didn't expect it to be upset. I completely forgot about
Hey,
it.
before eight, it's a win. I'm just gonna go and I can.
It's good. You know, you never said.
Ugh. Austin,
As long as you-
here's the sign.
Really.
I need to